hello to Clair Linzey. You have an amazing title. I thought I have to talk to this woman. She's taking care of all of the animal ethical problems in the United Kingdom, or maybe the world. You're the Deputy Director of the Oxford Center for Animal Ethics, and you've done a huge amount of being a professor and a director and a researcher and an author. And how do you juggle all that? Animal ethics is, oh, you must wake up in the morning and think, are there any elephants left alive? Don't you just worry so much all the time?
I do worry a lot. And I think burnout is very common in the world of people who really care about animals, like most social justice movements. But
Yeah,
I don't do the truly heroic work most of the time of saving the animals, which is just incredibly rewarding but difficult. I do the work of trying to talk to people about animals and change their minds,
right.
which is also difficult, but I think in some ways easier to do because it's less. Oh, it is emotional, but it's not as emotional as doing the actual physical saving of animals, right? So
Yes.
talking to people about them is a joy most of the time, and it's really wonderful when you find people who love animals too.
I imagine that it's easier, I don't know this to be true, in the United Kingdom than in other countries because being Oxford University, you're not territorially centric. You're interested in the whole big picture, other countries, I don't
We
know,
are.
right?
Yes, we are totally interested in other countries. I think there is a kind of funny myth that British people care more about animals than other nations. I'm not entirely sure that's true. I think if you look at the on a global perspective, nobody's getting it 100% right. Some people are making advancements in some areas, but they're not in other areas. I do that all the time in Spain. They're inching closer to legally recognizing great apes as persons, but then they might allow octopus farming. So, swings and roundabouts. And the same is true here, right? We're making a lot of progress on some issues, but in other things, we're still way behind. The UK, the England is one of the last three places in Europe that still allows snares, which are horrible ways to trap
Really?
free living animals. Yeah. Wales and Scotland have recently banned it, but England, it's still fair game. And so we make progress in some areas. Nowhere is making perfect progress on everything. I think there's always work to be done everywhere.
When you have young students, so you're a professor of animal theology at the Graduate Theological Foundation. So that's interesting. Animal theology. Do animals have souls? That old question.
Yeah, I'm also a research fellow at Wycliffe Hall at Oxford, and Wycliffe primarily trains people for ordination in the
Oh,
Church of England. So
really?
I
I
spend
didn't
a lot
know
of time
that.
thinking about animal theology. Yes, yes, I do,
Wow. All right.
which is great.
So what is animal theology? I had no idea this was something you could be part of your ordination as a minister or a priest or what?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there are increasing number of courses in it, and there is increasing number of people who specialize in it as well. It's really a sub-discipline that my father, Andrew Lindsay, pioneers in the 80s and
Oh.
90s. And I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? So animal theology begins from the very simple premise that God has other interests beyond the human species, right?
Oh, I
However much
like
God is
that.
interested in the human species, if you're a Christian, the triune God has made all these other species that they love and care for, right? So, and that we should begin by respecting them as beings loved and cared for by God.
So this
So,
is a deep philosophy, like a way of living your life. So just to take an extreme of that, I think it's an extreme. The Jain sect, I think they are. The
mhm.
Jains in India, they may exist elsewhere. The belief that every little living thing, including an insect, is just as important as every other living thing, and you're supposed to wear, let's say, a face mask and not bother an ant or a fly or anything. But then, of course, they let the cows starve and dehydrate in the streets. It's very confusing. But is Jane? Do any Janeite? They aren't called Janeites. Those are people who like Jane Austen. Do the Jane followers, believers, do they come to Oxford and take courses in animal theology?
Our centre, the Oxford Centre for Animal Ethics, which is independent of the university, has a fellowship, and we have some fellows who are Jains and Jain
Wow.
scholars. So that is a thing. We're quite multi-religious in our outlook, and really we try to be as multi-faith as possible. I don't personally, I don't subscribe to the idea that animals are of equal value necessarily as human beings, right? But that they deserve moral consideration, right? There are some animal thinkers who like to stress that humans aren't unique in amongst creation. But from my perspective, humans have a very specific, unique role within creation, which is to care for other creatures, right? So I don't actually subscribe to the idea that we're not unique. We alone, so far, science is with me on this, have ethics. So we have the ability to treat them in a way in which they cannot always treat us, right?
But
So
wait a minute. I thought lots of animals had ethics. Seriously.
uh,
Ethics in terms of looking after each other and giving each other a turn.
do animals show altruistic traits? Yes. Can they? But do they have ethical frameworks and decision making the way that we do? No, not as far as we know. So I think some philosophers have argued that animals can be moral agents. I'm not sure whether that philosophically holds up. What we know is that they are moral patients, right? So that they can be the subject of our ethical decisions, right? And that most of the time that we have the ability to treat them in a way in which they don't always have the ability to treat us, right? We have free will and choice, and they don't.
And they
Yes.
don't? Which animals don't have free will and choice? The ones who are captive to be eaten?
For sure. But they also have. I'm not a philosopher. We are straying outside of theology.
Wait a
Uh,
minute, hang on. I would have thought theology and philosophy are blood relatives, cousins. I would think
yeah,
that the things we're talking about are completely philosophical, and it's really important for us to know that there's an entire center that looks at the philosophical issues. I think of theology as philosophy of a kind.
Ah, I see. Okay, so I think of animal ethics not just as philosophy. So animal ethics is the way the center uses it is an interdisciplinary approach which incorporates different philosophical positions on animals. We don't take, for example, necessarily just the rights position or the abolitionist position when it comes to our approaches to animals. Rather, we take the view that none has it entirely right, right? But what we're interested in is progressive academic perspectives on animals. And you can have those in a whole range of disciplines, law, for example, psychology, sciences, theology as well, obviously. So
Right?
for us, we are interested in an interdisciplinary conversation around animals because most of the time when you're making ethical arguments about animals, you are using scientific knowledge, you're using the legal constraints of the time or what legal advances are being made, and you're using a whole range of human psychology and other things, right? So you use all the things in your toolbox. So I don't like to think of us as limited just to philosophy.
No, I just think of the whole thing as this is maybe lowercase p philosophy, and a friend's son got a graduate degree in philosophy from Oxford. I don't have no idea what were the words that he wrote in his thesis. I have no idea. It's so complex. It's like physics in a sense when it's that capital P philosophy.
Yeah.
But it would seem to me, and maybe in England the word philosophy might be used somewhat differently, that philosophically you think everything should be looked at. Now that's to me, that is a word that means all encompassing, not we're going to stand up for animal rights or we're going to stand up against pig farming. Or, in other words, it's not taking a position, it's looking at all the positions and what and where are we in society. And
Oh, I think I would like to say we take a position. It's definitely a progressive view of animals, and we write ethical critiques of specific practices, fur farming, predator control being two recent examples. So we definitely have a position. And my view is that all knowledge comes from a point of view. To quote Weber, there's no such thing as real objectivity in that sense. And our view is that animals are worthy of moral considerability. What we don't do necessarily is campaign. We are not a campaigning
Right,
organization.
right.
So we educate. A public debate, I hope.
That's good. That's a good way of putting it. But I would think a
Yeah.
public debate is philosophical. But again, I see you as a sort of mediator in the space of knowledge and understanding, that you
Yeah.
look at it all and you put it forward and you can come to conclusions, but you want people to see how you came to the conclusions, hoping they too can follow those breadcrumbs to a
Yeah.
better understanding or a different practice.
Yeah. And I think to the extent that all knowledge is philosophy, thinking in that sense, yeah, it is philosophical. The arguments we construct, for example, we've written two amicus briefs for the Non-Human Rights Project, which support two different cases they have going on. But often what you're questioning is the underlying philosophical or even theological assumptions in the law. So the one we wrote most recently was in the Michigan Court of Appeals in the case of like chimpanzees. And it was really interesting because the appeal court judges referenced dominion, a 17th century version of dominion given by William Blackstone, which characterized it as despotic. And so our brief was about understanding, hey, what does dominion actually mean in the biblical context? And B, critiquing that and showing why actually it doesn't mean despotism. And actually, there are ways in which most biblical scholars agree that dominion is given and with the image of God, and you have to ask what kind of God are we made in the image of, and then we're immediately given a vegetarian, even vegan diet. So you have to ask yourself, what kind of dominion is it? You
Wait a minute,
can't
I don't
actually
even
eat that.
know what minion is. Okay, so there's a
So
huge gap
dominion
in my
is
knowledge.
given. Dominion is given in Genesis 1, and basically it's the idea that when God created the world, he created the animals and he made them first, and then he created humans and he made them in the image, and then he gives them dominion over the earth.
Ah,
And a lot of the time, that dominion has been understood historically to mean that, and that might equals right, that we are given dominion over the earth and we can do whatever we want with it.
oh
But
my.
actually, there are very few biblical scholars and theologians who would agree with that. But that conception of dominion as might equals right can be somehow embedded in the law. And so,
Wow.
our job is to help unpick that and
Thank
say,
you.
well, if this is wrong, what we're doing here is wrong. But
Saying
it's
that in Milwaukee, United States, they look
Michigan.
Michigan, okay, an
Mhm.
MI state. I'm really great on geography. So they look at something written in the 1700s based on thoughts or religious thoughts at the time, and that's their argument for not giving great apes personhood status.
Yeah, so it was a writ of habeas corpus for 7 chimpanzees in a roadside zoo. And yes, these animal advocates, we often expect those kind of writs to be denied. None of the courts have upheld them yet in the United States. But what was surprising was this appeal he's a very renowned legal jurist, William Blackstone, and he's quite progressive on a range of other issues, just not on animals, right? And so he's often cited in precedents, but it was odd that they cited specifically Dominion. So we were asked to critique that.
So you're saying that in modern day, I'm very
Mhm.
unclear about the big difference in the way the UK government is set up and the US one. The US one, until recent destruction of it, had three branches, and the
Mhm.
executive and the legal and so forth were separated. Now they're mixed together in a quite inappropriate way. Not my opinion, it's just facts based on how it was all set up. So it's, you speak of despots and people saying might makes right, and because I said so, it's true. Unfortunately, that seems to be taking place. But where animals are concerned, why in heaven's name would somebody refer to somebody 300 years ago? Is that how backward we are? We don't have a new thought in 2021. This guy was really smart in 1700. Great. He didn't even know about antibiotics. Are you serious? That's really
Yeah.
how they're making the basis of this wisdom.
Precedence is a strange thing, right? They appeal to whatever they like. And I think, yeah, I think the Non-Human Rights Project were as surprised as we were. But it it is one of those ways in which you can clearly see, you mentioned souls before, ideas of dominion, ideas of souls, theological ideas underpin our modern day structures about animals. And often they go unchallenged. And so
Oh,
part of my work is to try and challenge that. And it's actually, there can be quite an amount of resistance to it, but I think it's really important. If you go to Latin America, as what my doctorate was on, and you speak to people about animals, they'll immediately tell you that animals don't have souls, so we don't have to care about them because we don't have souls. But actually, that isn't the Roman Catholic position, never has been. They just don't have immortal souls. Animals have souls, they're just
oh.
animal souls, right? So, A, that's wrong. And B, if they don't have immortal souls, then this life is all they get. And actually, their suffering in this life matters more theologically because they aren't going to heaven if you believe in souls, which I'm not sure I do,
Or if you believe in
but
heaven. Or what's interesting is that they, in this, that is philosophy, as far as I'm concerned, what you just said, is a philosophical understanding of the kind of misuse, abuse, distortion of some ideas to fit one's ideas in the moment. So Roman Catholic churches let animals tromp in on whatever that day is, the blessing of the animals. You could actually go into a Roman Catholic church. So
yeah.
they must be blessing them for some reason other than just that they produce more milk or make more eggs. Or,
Yeah, the latest papal encyclical in 2015, Laudato Si, explicitly talked about how we do not have the right to treat the earth. We do not have the right to plunder it at will. That was the words he used. And that we don't have the right to cause animals to go extinct, and that they are members of our family, and we
aw,
have a vocation to protect them. So the Roman Catholic Church has come a long way on its
yes,
perspective on animals.
yes,
And I think that has really really moved in the last 15 years a great deal, but philosophical or theological ideas move slowly. And
correct.
the dominant ones, right? I mean, there have always been positive ideas about animals within nearly every religion. Every religion I can think of has some positive things to say about animals throughout time. But the dominant voices that come to the front are always the ones that say you can do what you want
Isn't
because
that interesting?
it's in our interest to do
Yeah,
what we want,
because we're mighty, so we can.
so we
So,
can.
what is it like to grow up with a theological father, a theological academic? I would even say philosopher. Did you hear many of these ideas? Many of the things we're talking about to a lot of the listeners in America would be, wow, they're talking about big ideas. Why are they doing that? But I think that's what your life is now. And it must have been growing up. Big ideas matter. And talking about them matters, and even arguing about them is good. So tell about that. And then I want to ask about other religions that consider animals not even
Sure.
worthy of
Um,
being touched.
yeah, I'm one of four. My dad was chaplain to the University of Essex when I was a child. We were raised to think that God loves animals and cares for them and that they have value. But my dad was a very vocal advocate for animals when I was a child. I thought everybody's parent was on TV or on the news answering questions and things. It wasn't until I was much older that I realized that this was quite strange and that this is what people's
That's
parents said.
lovely.
It was a multi-faith chaplaincy. He was the Anglican lead, but diversity of religions. Yeah, there were diversity of religious people there when I was a child. So I grew up surrounded in a kind of multi-faith, tolerant and community. Tolerance not the right word because that implies toleration, but like a genuine interest.
Inclusion. There would be Buddhists and there would be Muslims and there would
Yeah,
be
an inclusive
Jews.
space. Yeah, and until I was younger, I really thought all Christians were vegetarian. I just thought that
Oh,
and they wouldn't believe in things like the death penalty, or I thought that they were really. So it was actually a little disappointing when I discovered The other Christians didn't exactly feel the same way. So, and it's a challenge, but in a really great way. And actually, I've been really lucky. My older brother, turned out to be a filmmaker, and he's actually just made a documentary called The Animal Thing, that will be
Wow.
coming out in the fall. And that is about dad and his life
Oh,
and
fantastic.
the
I would love
struggles
to
of being an animal theologian.
I would love to have your brother come on when the film is going to be available so we can talk about
Great.
that. What an
Yeah.
amazing effect your father had. Out of at least two of his four children are carrying the flag, if you will. He's passed the baton in a serious way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Adam, I would say with all my other siblings, they've pursued a creative, brilliant path, but I think all of us still retain the teachings and the
Yes.
feelings towards animals. We're all still vegetarian and or vegan and all still care deeply about animals. It's not necessarily their life's work in quite the same way it is
Right,
mine.
right.
But yeah, Adam does make a range of films about animals as well. So yeah.
Isn't that lovely? I
Yeah.
mean, that would, of course, make your father really proud. So, the idea of other religions in which animals are not considered at all or are considered dirty or just filth, not to, I only know that's true of, as I understand it, of Orthodox Jewry. You couldn't have
Mhm.
one in the house. And there must be other religions. This whole idea that Christians are one thing, by the way, at least in America, that's no longer true. There are many different versions and offshoots, if you will, and they're very passionate about their ideas, which may or may not include animals, but certainly the human animal is not given as much respect or kindness or morality as one would hope. But what about these other religions vis-a-vis animals? What did you think about that when you were first
Oh,
learning?
when I was first, I think growing up in a kind of multi-faith different perspectives, so you learn to see that actually each religion has something to offer on animals. It's not necessarily no religion is getting it perfectly right. That is
Right,
what's happening, right?
for sure.
But and people often think of Islam as a not pro
Right.
animal religion, but actually that isn't, if you look more closely, that's not the case. There's a one part in their holy literature which talks about how animals are communities like ours.
Oh, nice.
And I think within each tradition, there are people advocating for animals from within their traditions, right?
Nice.
So I don't like to speak necessarily for other religions, but in each religion I know of,
There's
there
something
are
good.
people within it drawing on their own faith traditions and
Nice.
speaking up for animals. Yeah, and I think that's really encouraging and
It
inspiring.
is.
It's
That's good
not
to know. That's
because I
very good
think we
to.
like to think of it as a Western
And we're
construct,
right,
but
and it isn't.
it's not really true.
Well,
No.
we've run out of time, and your
Oh,
dog is
have
up. Your dog is upstaging you. He's hilarious. He's
we? Hi,
scrumpling.
Max.
He's scrumpling on the couch. He's. It's about me, isn't it? Oh
It's
my God, he's
about
so
me.
darling.
I'm so
Well,
sorry. Yes, this is my rescue
animals.
dog, Max.
Oh, Max. Obviously, animals in the Lindsay family in the under the Lindsay roof have a very good life.
They do.
Claire, it's been wonderful talking to you and so interesting to open up our minds a little bit to the things that your mind has been focused on for your
Oh.
whole life from the beginning. It's a wonderful family tradition and admirable. Thank you so much for all the good work you're doing and for spending time with me.
Thank you for having me. It was lovely to talk to you, Tracy.